Hello everyone and welcome back to the series on voice science for Carnatic singers. My name is Krithika and I'm. I am a speech language pathologist who specializes in voice, and I'm also a Carnatic vocalist. And I wanted to explain the voice science of how we produce voice in a way that is sustainable, safe, and easy. So we talked about power, source, and filter when it comes to voice production. Let's talk about power today, power or breath. If you remember what I said before, power is less about the actual air that comes out from your lungs and more about the breath pressure. But in order to talk about pressure exertion, we do have to talk about how we're exerting that pressure. When it comes to breathing, when we breathe quietly, what happens is that we have some muscles in our rib cage which can expand and collapse or contract. And when they get bigger, the entire lung cavity gets bigger, and then there is a vacuum. So the air, we don't really actively pull air in. It's almost like a vacuum cleaner where because it gets bigger, the air gets sucked in. So the pulling in of air is very, very natural and fundamental to being a human. And sometimes we can overthink that. So even when we sing, it is not a good idea to overthink breathing, particularly the inhale, because if we start messing too much with it, we can overthink it and then we won't do it correctly, or we'll put in more effort than we need to. So let your body inhale the way it wants to inhale. You are probably doing it correctly. One sign of not inhaling correctly, and if anything, we do this more, like I said, when we are putting too much effort into it, is when you start raising your shoulders and straining your neck to inhale. So if you're doing a kind of an inhale, that is one, not efficient, because raising your shoulders doesn't really help your lungs expand. Your lungs are here, your shoulders are here. Two, it is harmful because if you remember me talking about the anatomy of the larynx, there are a lot of muscles that connect the larynx to the shoulders coming up like this. And if you were to involve those muscles, because you do, if you try to lift your shoulders, then those muscles can't involve themselves in singing, especially when you're doing things like gamakams and other things like that. You want to keep those muscles available to use when you sing. So don't lift your shoulders, don't strain your neck. You want to breathe from as low in your body as you can. And this is different for different people. You may find that you're using your rib cage, so your ribs will expand out to the sides, out to the front, and out to the back, like a 360-degree expansion. You may find that you're expanding your torso, where your torso and abdomen come out when you inhale, and then when you exhale, they go right back in. So all of this was still talking about the inhale. The key, of course, to singing is the exhale. So that's where we create that pressure with our breath when we sing. So in order to create that pressure, we don't actually need a whole lot of pressure to sing. Our vocal cords are really tiny, so you don't need a whole lot of pressure. So instead, we need time. So we need to be able to push that exhale for a really long time so we can sing a really, 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 really long phrase. We want to focus on making that exhale go as long as we can, and that means we want the relaxation of the muscles, because remember, they tighten or they hold when we inhale, and again, we don't need to do anything there. Our body knows what to do, but we want that exhale to be really slow and really controlled. So what that means ideally is that we want to engage our core. If you're wearing something really tight when you are singing, so a really tight sari, a really tight dhoti, or really tight pants, then that may be hard to do. It may also be hard to do that if you just ate a really huge meal before you sing, because your torso is kind of occupied. So ideally, you don't want to have too much constriction in that area before you're singing, because you are going to be exercising it. And finally, because you want to extend that exhale, it still doesn't make sense to practice just breathing quietly, because that doesn't help you extend it. Instead, a really good way to practice extending that is on what we call an SOVT, or any kind of semi-closed sound. So you may find that you do it on an and as you extend that exhale on that you will feel, or you should feel, your core engaging as you empty your lungs. So that feeling of keeping that sound going by continuing to exert pressure at your throat while your lungs are still being emptied, that is the key, because you don't want to start gasping at the end of every breath. You want to get used to the feeling of emptying your breath completely and keeping your airflow really smooth as you do that. So in essence, power is really not something you want to overthink. You don't want to put too much tension into it, but you do want to keep your exhale as long as you can, because that's how you're going to be able to sing, by using your torso and your ribs and not your shoulders or your neck. So here's where Thyagaraja talking about Nabhi Hritkantha Rasana makes sense to us, because that Nabhi is what you want to use to direct your breath. You can't really have sound from your Nabhi, but you can have breath from your Nabhi. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment below if you have anything specific you would like to ask about power, and I will do my best to answer them in upcoming videos, and I will see you for the next one.